The ocean doesn't do silence. Even on a dead night, there's always something. Slap of water on aluminum, a line creaking, a generator you can feel more than hear. So when everything went quiet, like somebody put a hand over the whole world's mouth, I knew I was screwed before I even understood what I was looking at. I wasn't supposed to be out there. That's the first thing I tell myself when I wake up drenched in sweat and smelling brine that isn't in my apartment. I wasn't supposed to be out there on that black water, in that fog, with a work badge in my pocket and a duffel bag between my boots like I was just commuting to another shift. But I was. Because if you've ever worked around Navy money and offshore infrastructure, you know how it goes. You do what you're told, you don't ask what the equipment actually does, and you take the overtime because rent doesn't care about your conscience. I was a contractor, sonar tech, systems integration, whatever title looked clean on paper. In reality, I babysat a classified listening package, bolted to the seafloor, and pretended I didn't understand why it needed to be there. We called it a node. That was the word everybody used because it sounded harmless and boring. Like a router, like a thing that just sits there. It didn't just sit there. My brother lived up the coast in one of those salt-stained towns where everybody either fixes boats, or drinks about the fact they used to fish and fix boats. He called me 3 days earlier, wrecked and furious, telling me his girlfriend was done, that he'd wasted his whole goddamn life, that nobody ever stayed, that he was thinking about doing something stupid. So I went, not because I'm a saint, because he's my brother, and I know what that kind of voice sounds like when it's 2 beers away from cliff. The visit dragged. That's what guilt does. It makes you stay longer than you should. We fought. We made up. We fought again. We ate greasy takeout that tasted like cardboard and old fryer oil. He chain-smoked on his back steps while the tide slurped at the rocks, and I kept checking my phone like I could outrun my schedule. By the time I finally left, it was close to midnight, and the ocean looked like a sheet of black glass with a bruise-colored sky pressed against it. "Text me when you get back," he said, arms crossed, trying to look tougher than he felt. "You gonna be okay?" He snorted. "Define okay. Don't be a dick." He laughed, but it was hollow. "Love you too." I drove down to the marina with the windows cracked because his place reeked of cigarettes and old fish food, and I needed clean air. The harbor lights made long, shaky reflections on the water. Masts clicked like teeth. Somebody's dog barked once and then shut up like even it didn't want to be awake. The crew boat was tied off on the far end, a chunky little aluminum thing built for speed and foul weather. Crew transfer vessels always smell the same. Diesel, wet rope, stale coffee, and the faint sour stink of people who've been sweating in rain gear for 12 hours. The skipper was already on board. His name was Rivas, which everybody said like it was one word with a warning attached. He was short, thick, and permanently pissed off, like his face had been carved out of driftwood by a resentful god. He looked me up and down and made a face at my duffel. "You're late." "It's midnight," I said. He spat over the side. "Time doesn't stop because you're tired. You want me to swim the next time?" He grunted. That was his version of a greeting. He pointed at the cabin. "Stow your shit. We're pushing off." I climbed aboard. The deck was slick with salt. My boots left wet prints. The air felt heavy, like the whole coast was sweating. There were only 3 of us. Rivas, me, and a deckhand named Lal who looked like he hadn't slept since the Obama administration. Lal gave me a nod and went back to fiddling with a coil of line like it had personally offended him. Rivas fired the engines. The boat vibrated under my feet. That familiar low rumble crawled up my legs, up my spine, into my teeth. It was comforting in the way anything routine is comforting when your brain's tired. We pulled away from the dock. The harbor dropped behind us, lights shrinking into a smear. I watched the water slip by, dark and thick. The wake hissed. Somewhere far off, a buoy bell clanged, slow and lonely. I tried to relax. I tried to think about anything that wasn't my brother's voice cracking when he said he didn't know how to keep going. I tried to think about the node, about the checklist I'd run 100 times. Power down, inspect, reseal uplink log, get paid, go home. Rivas pointed the bow out past the breakwater into open water. The sea was calm, but calm at night is just the ocean holding its breath. About 20 minutes out, fog rolled in so thick it felt like we'd driven into milk. I didn't jump at first. Fog happens. Sea fog is normal. It crawls in when the water's colder than the air, when two weather systems collide, when the ocean decides to hide its face. But this wasn't just low mist. This was a wall. The beam from our bow light hit it and died like it was hitting cloth. The world beyond that little cone of light ceased to exist. The horizon vanished. The stars vanished. Even the wave tops vanished until it felt like we were floating in nothing. Rivas eased off the throttle. The engines dropped to a lower rumble. The boat slowed, gliding. Jesus, Lyle muttered, leaning forward like he could peer through it with effort. Rivas didn't say anything. He just kept one hand on the wheel and the other on the throttle, jaw clenched. He hated anything he couldn't bully into behaving. I stepped out of the cabin and let the wet cold hit my face. Fog beaded on my eyelashes instantly. My beard went damp. The air tasted like metal, like you'd been sucking on a penny. Visibility shit, I said. No kidding, Rivas snapped. Sit down. I'm just. Sit. I sat on the bench outside the cabin, duffel between my feet, and watched the fog swirl. It didn't drift like normal fog. It moved like it had intention, like it was being poured around us. We passed an old marker buoy. At least I think we did. I only saw the top of it, and even that looked wrong. Everything looked wrong. You know how you can spot a person in the dark by their silhouette? Your brain recognizes the shape before it fills in details. That's what freaked me out first. The shapes in the fog were almost recognizable, but not quite. A line of something rose out of the water off our port side. At first, I thought it was a set of old pilings, rotted wooden posts from some long-gone structure. But as we got closer, the posts weren't straight. They twisted. They'd been in places that made no sense, like they'd been softened and wrung out. Some leaned toward us at angles that made my stomach tighten, like fingers reaching. Rivas, I said quietly. He didn't look. What? Slow down. I already slowed down. More. He finally glanced at me, annoyed, then back out into the fog. What? Because those aren't pilings. Lyle leaned out, squinting. What the hell are those? Rivas swore under his breath and throttled down another notch. The engine softened. The boat's forward motion became a quiet slide. As we drew level, the shapes resolved a little. They were covered in growth, barnacles and dark, stringy weed, but the underlying material wasn't wood. It looked like metal. Old, corroded metal, twisted like it had been heated and pulled. Pieces of it were bolted or riveted together in ways that didn't resemble anything I'd seen in shipwrecks. There were loops and spirals and joints that suggested something assembled with a purpose, then ruined. That's a wreck, Lyle said. No, I whispered, and I hated how small my voice sounded in that fog. It wasn't a wreck. It was a grove. A whole field of those twisted metal trunks, rising out of the water and vanishing into the fog above, like an underwater forest that had pushed up into the surface world. The tops weren't broken off. They ended in smooth curves like unfinished shapes, like something tried to imitate the idea of structures and got bored halfway through. Rivas turned the wheel slightly, giving the grove a wide berth. There's no charted debris field here, he muttered. Maybe it drifted, Lyle offered. Rivas made a noise like he was chewing a nail. Metal doesn't drift like that. The fog thickened again. The grove slipped behind us, swallowed. For a moment, it felt like we'd imagined it. Then the engines coughed. It was subtle, just a hiccup in the vibration under my boots. But every person on a boat knows that sound. Your whole body knows it. Engines don't cough unless something's wrong. Rivas stiffened. He glanced at the gauges. What the? The engines coughed again. Then again. The rumble turned uneven, like a heartbeat going arrhythmic. Fuel? Lyle asked. Full tanks, Rivas snapped. Shut up. The fog around us pulsed. That's the only word I have for it. It didn't just sit there. It tightened. like the air itself contracted. And then I saw it. Dead ahead, inside the cone of our bow light, something floated on the surface like a person. At first my brain tried to be helpful. It said, "That's a buoy. That's driftwood. That's a seal." Then my eyes adjusted and my stomach dropped. It was upright, not like a body bobbing, not like something caught and angled by waves. Upright, still like it was standing on the water. The fog clung to it, draping it. Our light hit it and reflected back in a wet sheen. "Rivas," I said louder. He saw it. I watched his shoulders tighten. His hand jerked on the wheel. The engines sputtered hard. The rumble died. The boat lost forward momentum, coasting. "Restart," Al said, already moving. Rivas slammed a hand on the console. "I'm trying." The thing in the water didn't move. It didn't drift with our wake. It just stayed there, perfectly placed, like it had been waiting for our light to find it. I stood up. My legs felt weird, like my blood had turned colder than the air. "Don't," Rivas barked without looking. "Stay seated." "Is that?" I said don't, but I was already stepping toward the bow, drawn by a stupid, sick curiosity that made my skin crawl. Fear was there, bright and sharp, but underneath it was something worse. The need to know. The part of the human brain that says if you just look hard enough, it'll make sense. The fog thinned for a second, like a curtain tugged aside, and the thing's outline became clearer. Humanoid, long-limbed, too long. Its arms hung down past where knees would be. Its head wasn't a head so much as an oval mass that caught the light and threw it back, smooth and pale like wet clay. No eyes, no mouth, no features. It stood in the water, chest deep maybe, except the water didn't ripple around it. It wasn't displacing anything. It was just there. The boat rocked gently. The fog pressed in. The engines clicked uselessly as Rivas tried to crank them. Then the sound of the ocean went away. Not faded, not muffled, gone. No wave slap, no wind, no engine click, no distant buoy bell. The world became a silent photograph. I sucked in a breath and heard nothing of it. My ears popped hard like I descended too fast in a dive, except we were at the surface. The pressure in my skull spiked. Lyle's mouth moved behind me. I couldn't hear him, but I saw the shape of a swear. I tried to speak. I tried to say, "What the fuck is that?" My lips moved. My throat worked. No sound came out. Panic hit me like a wave to the chest. That animal terror where your body screams at you that the rules just changed and you didn't get told how to survive. The fog above us began to peel back, not in a natural clearing, but like it was being sucked upward. It stretched. It thinned. It streamed into a point in the sky. Except it wasn't the sky. It was something overhead. Something circular. At first, it was just a darker ring in the fog. Then the fog thinned enough for the bow light to catch it, and the light hit metal. A huge circle hung above the water, so big my brain refused to size it properly. It was slightly bent like an eyelid half closed. The ring wasn't smooth. It was segmented rib like a piece of industrial infrastructure scaled up to God size. In the center of the ring was a pocket of churning vapor, like fog-packed so tight it turned into a living eye. And everything, sound, fog, even the fine spray off the sea, was being drawn toward it. I watched tiny beads of moisture lift off the railing and drift upward, like the air had reversed its gravity. The fog streamed into that eye in slow, elegant spirals. The silence wasn't just absence. It was suction. It was like the world was being gently vacuumed. I whispered without sound again because it was all I could do. Rivas looked up. His face went slack. All his anger drained out in a heartbeat. He made the sign of the cross, fast, shaky, and then stopped himself like he was embarrassed by his own instinct. While backed up until he hit the cabin door, eyes wide, hands up like he could push the sight away. The thing in the water, standing upright, tilted slightly, as if acknowledging the ring overhead, or acknowledging us. Then the hum started. It didn't come through the air. It came through the boat. A deep, low vibration rolled up from beneath the hull, through the aluminum, into my bones. It was so low I felt it in my stomach more than I heard it. Except heard wasn't even the right word. My ears were still dead. The silence was still there. But my body felt the hum like a second heartbeat. The deck screws rattled. The railing trembled under my fingers. My teeth buzzed. Out in the water, the twisted metal trees we'd passed earlier, now barely visible as silhouettes through thinning fog, shuddered, shedding clumps of weed and barnacles. The sea around them rippled in tight, concentric rings, like something huge had just exhaled underwater. The ring overhead began to rotate, slow at first, then faster like an iris adjusting. As it spun, thin beams of light seeped out from it. Not bright searchlight beams, but pale, cold shafts that slid across the fog and water like fingers. The beams reached outward, away from us, into the nothing, then curved back in impossible arcs, bending around the ring and returning like boomerangs. The geometry was wrong. My brain kept trying to map it and failing, like watching a knot tie itself. The light hit the sea's surface, and instead of reflecting normally, it printed shapes, symbols. They crawled across the water in shifting patterns, like bioluminescent algae responding to a tide, except this wasn't algae and this wasn't tide. The symbols looked like language if language had been invented by something that didn't have hands or eyes. Loops, angles, spirals that made my head ache when I tried to focus on them. The beams slid over the boat, over my hands, over Rivas's face. Everywhere the light touched, I felt a cold pressure, like being pressed by deep water. My skin prickled. My lungs tightened. Rivas slammed the ignition again. The engines remained dead. His mouth moved in a furious shout I couldn't hear. Veins stood out in his neck. He looked like he wanted to fight the air. The symbols touched the dashboard inside the cabin, and the instrument panel lights flickered. The digital display stuttered and began to warp. The numbers stretched and looped into the same shapes I saw on the water. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I yanked it out without thinking, relief flashing, some normal thing, some signal. The screen was on, except it wasn't showing my lock screen. It was showing black, with pale lines forming a slow, rotating circle. And in the center, a single word tried to appear. Not typed, not in any font I recognized. More like impressed into the pixels. I felt it rather than read it. Found. The word didn't come through my eyes. It came through my skull. A whisper bloomed inside my head, intimate and cold, like someone leaning in close on the other side of my thoughts. Found. I jerked so hard I almost dropped the phone. My heart hammered, and I couldn't hear it, which somehow made it worse. I slapped the phone against my thigh like I could knock the feeling out. While grabbed my arm, fingers digging into my sleeve. His mouth moved. Did you hear that? I shook my head violently, then realized he couldn't hear anything either. None of us could, yet his eyes said he'd felt it too. The hum deepened. It turned rhythmic. Thud, thud, thud. It wasn't sound. It was pressure, like enormous footsteps pounding the seafloor directly beneath us, sending shockwaves up through the water and into the hull. With each thud, the sea's surface dimpled, as if something massive below was pushing up. The thing in the water began to move. Not swimming, not walking. It rose. It lifted out of the sea without disturbing it, like it was being pulled up by invisible threads. Water slid off its glossy limbs in sheets that didn't splash. The longer it rose, the more I understood it wasn't chest deep. It had been standing on nothing. It was tall, too tall, and as it emerged, its proportions got worse, like a bad dream refining itself. Arms as long as its entire torso. Fingers that weren't fingers so much as smooth, gnarled extensions jointed in the wrong places. Its skin, or whatever served as skin, looked black and wet and reflective like oil in moonlight. Where a face should have been, there was that featureless pale oval, shining like a drowned statue. It rotated toward me. I don't mean to turn its head. It had no head shape. Its whole upper body shifted, and that blank oval pointed directly at me. And I knew, without eyes, without sound, without any normal cue. It was looking at me. The pull hit then. A weird, sick tug in my chest, like my lungs wanted to empty into the air. Like my whole body wanted to step forward and climb over the bow rail and go to it. Rivas grabbed the wheel so hard his knuckles went white. Then he did something that probably saved our lives. He slammed the throttle forward even though the engines were dead. Nothing happened. He slammed it again, like anger could restart physics. The symbols on the dash flared. The lights on the panel blinked in a pattern that matched the ring overhead. The wheel jerked in his hands. The boat turned on its own. Not a gentle drift. A sharp, sudden swing like an unseen hand had grabbed the stern and yanked. Rivas stumbled, cursing silently, fighting it. I'll grab the cabin frame to keep from falling. The boat pivoted until we were facing the thing directly. Bow lights centered on that blank oval. My stomach lurched. The pull in my chest tightened, and for a second, I thought I was going to vomit into the silent air. Then the ring overhead constricted. The rotating metal segments drew inward slightly, like an eyelid narrowing. The beams of light snapped back into it all at once. The symbols on the water vanished. The pressure in my ears spiked again, and then sound slammed back into the world like a door kicked open. The ocean roared. The wind hissed. The boat creaked. Lal shouted something raw and high. Rivas yelled a curse so loud it cracked. And layered under all of it was the hum, now audible, a deep reverberant tone that made the air itself vibrate. The engines coughed to life. Rivas didn't hesitate. He threw us into a hard turn so violent I got slammed into the rail. My ribs rang. The bow rose as he punched the throttle, and the boat surged forward. I twisted to look back. The fog was thinning fast now, streaming up into that ring as if it was hungry. The ring hung there, rotating slowly, and beneath it the thing hovered just above the sea's surface, arms dangling, water dripping off its fingertips in slow, deliberate threads. It wasn't chasing us yet. It was letting us leave, like it had already gotten what it wanted. The thudding continued behind us, each impact shaking the water. The boat bounced as if the sea itself was shuddering. Rivas kept his foot down. The crew boat hit 40 knots, then more. The hull slapped the water hard enough to rattle my teeth. In the cabin, the radio squawked to life. At first, I felt relief. Comms meant normalcy. Comms meant we could call for help. Comms meant whatever was happening had rules we understood. Then the speaker erupted in noise that didn't belong to any frequency I'd ever heard. It wasn't static. It was voices, a layered chorus of wet, warbling sound, like whales singing through broken machinery, like metal groaning underwater, like 100 throats trying to form words and failing. The noise rose and fell in patterns that made my skin crawl. It felt like the symbols from the water had turned into sound. Lal slapped the radio, yelling, "Kill it! Kill it!" Rivas jabbed at the controls, and the noise only got louder, spilling out of the speaker in a furious wail. I clapped my hands over my ears. It didn't help. The sound wasn't just in the air. It was in my bones again, vibrating my jaw. Between the bursts of that alien chorus, I heard something else. A ping, a sonar ping, clean and sharp. Then another, then a sequence too regular to be random, too wrong to be equipment. Ping, ping, ping. The rhythm matched the thudding. Lal leaned forward, eyes bloodshot. "That's not us," he shouted over the noise. "That's not our set." "I know," I shouted back, and the fact that my voice worked again didn't make me feel better. Outside, as we tore through the water, the sea around us began to change. Kelp, thick mats of it, the kind that drifts in long ropes, appeared out of nowhere, rising like arms from below. They bent inward as we passed, reaching toward the hull. One rope snapped against the side, leaving a smear. At first I thought it was just weed slime. Then the smell hit. Oil, sharp and rancid. I looked down and saw black fluid oozing along the aluminum, thick and glossy, catching the running lights like it was alive. I saw it too. "What the fuck is that?" Rivas didn't answer. His face had gone pale. Sweat ran down his temple despite the cold. He kept the throttle pinned. More kelp ropes rose. More snapped. The black fluid smeared and dripped, sliding toward the scuppers in slow, reluctant trails. Behind us, through the thinning fog, I caught a glimpse of the twisted metal grove again. Those crooked trees rising out of the water. This time they weren't still. They leaned. They bent. They angled toward our wake, like the whole grove was bowing as we fled. And between their crooked trunks, hovering just above the water, that blank oval face flickered into view one last time. Not closer, not farther, just there, watching. Then the fog swallowed it, and the only thing left was the radio's screaming chorus and the steady, obscene pinging. Rivas slammed the radio off. The cabin fell into a sudden, ringing quiet. Normal quiet this time, full of ocean and engine and our ragged breathing. We ran. We ran blind through black water, following GPS and muscle memory and the faint glow of distant shore lights. I kept twisting to look back, expecting to see the ring overhead, expecting to see fog boiling up behind us. But there was nothing, just open sea. After a while, 15 miles, maybe more, the air started to feel normal again. The pressure behind my eyes eased. The taste of metal faded to plain salt. The engine hum settled into its usual rhythm. Lyle slumped against the cabin wall, shaking. "Tell me you saw that." "I saw it," I said, voice raw. Rivas didn't speak for a long time. He stared forward like if he looked anywhere else he'd lose control of the boat again. Finally, he said, very quietly, "We don't talk about this." Lyle barked a laugh. Hein panicked. "We don't talk about? Are you kidding me? We almost." Rivas snapped his head toward him. "You want to keep your job? You want to keep your clearance? You want to not have men in uniforms crawling up your ass with paperwork and health evaluations?" I'll shut his mouth. Rivas's voice was low, dangerous. We hit a weird patch of fog. Engine stalled. We got spooked. "That's it. That thing," I started. Rivas cut me off hard. "That's it." He stared at me like he was trying to intimidate the memory out of my head. "You understand?" My throat tightened. I wanted to argue. I wanted to shout that silence is how people die. But the truth is, I understood exactly what he meant. Navy money comes with Navy consequences. You don't get to see weird shit and then just go home and talk about it like it's a ghost story. So I nodded. "Yeah, I understand." Rivas turned back forward. His hands were still trembling on the wheel. We reached the harbor before dawn. The town lights blinked like tired eyes. The breakwater loomed out of the dark. The buoy bell clanged again, normal and lonely. As we slipped back into sheltered water, I realized something that made my stomach twist. The ocean noise was back. Everything sounded normal, but I could still feel it. A pressure behind me, like someone standing too close. Like something huge had leaned in and memorized the shape of my life. Rivas docked without speaking. He tied off. Lyle grabbed my duffel and shoved it at me like he couldn't wait to get rid of anything connected to the night. I stepped onto the dock. My legs felt rubbery. The world felt too bright under the sodium lights, too ordinary. My clothes were damp with fog and spray. My hands smelled like oil, even though I hadn't touched the black fluid. "Go home," Rivas said, not meeting my eyes. "Sleep. Forget." Lyle didn't even say goodbye. He walked away fast, shoulders hunched, like if he moved quickly enough he could outrun whatever we'd seen. I drove home along the coast because I couldn't stand the idea of turning inland, away from the water, like I was abandoning something I should be watching. Every red light felt too long. Every reflection in the windshield looked wrong. The taste of metal kept coming back in my mouth like a penny I couldn't spit out. When I got to my apartment, the first thing I did was shower, hot enough to make my skin sting. I scrubbed my hands until they were raw. The smell of oil wouldn't leave. Then I sat on my couch in a towel, dripping onto the cheap carpet, and stared at my phone. No missed calls, no messages. Except when I opened my camera by accident, the screen went black for a second longer than it should have, and for that heartbeat of delay, I saw a pale circle in the center, like an iris closing. I slammed the phone face down on the table and laughed once, sharp and humorless, because what the hell else do you do? I tried to tell myself it was exhaustion, bad weather, some freak electrical interference, some experimental tech test that went sideways, and nobody warned us because need to know. That's what my brain kept offering up, like rational excuses were life preservers. But when I finally crawled into bed, I didn't dream of my brother or my job, or even that faceless thing. I dreamt of sound being sucked out of my lungs. I dreamt of fog streaming upward. I dreamt of a ring hanging under the surface, not in the sky, underwater, embedded in the dark like a pupil set into the ocean itself. And in the dream, the pinging never stopped. The next day, I had to go to the secure site office for a debrief. That's what they called it. Post-incident review. A neat phrase that made it sound like a minor safety concern instead of whatever the hell that was. The office was in a warehouse-looking building near the pier. No signs, no windows, just a keypad and a camera and a man in a polo shirt with dead eyes who scanned my badge like he was checking groceries. Inside, everything smelled like disinfectant and burnt coffee. The walls were painted that government beige that makes time feel slower. Somewhere behind the walls, servers hummed. A lieutenant I'd met once, Collins, sat across from me at a metal table. He had the kind of face that looked friendly until you realized it never actually changed. He slid a folder toward me. We got the skipper's report. I didn't touch it. My hands were clenched in my lap. Okay. Collins tapped the folder. Fog bank. Engine stall. Temporary comms distortion. I stared at him. That's what it says? That's what it says. He watched me carefully. Is that accurate? There it was. The moment. The test. If I said no, if I said anything else, this room would become a trap. If I said yes, I was swallowing it forever. My throat felt dry. I could taste that damn metal again. Collins leaned back in his chair, casual. I know it was uncomfortable. A lot of people aren't used to being offshore at night. The sensory stuff can mess with you. Sensory stuff? I repeated, and my voice came out sharper than I intended. His eyes narrowed a fraction. You disagree? I thought about Rivas's face, drained of anger. I thought about Lyle's shaking hands. I thought about the ring overhead pulling the ocean's voice into itself. I thought about the whisper in my skull. Found. I forced myself to breathe evenly. No, I lied. It's accurate. Collins nodded like he'd expected that. He slid a pen toward me. Sign. I signed. My signature looked wrong, like someone else's hand did it. Collins gathered the papers. Good. Get some rest. You're scheduled to redeploy in 3 nights. The node's maintenance window is tight. My head snapped up. Redeploy. He smiled thin. We have a schedule. You're the tech assigned. You're going back out. A cold wave rolled through me, and it had nothing to do with fog. No. The word came out before I could stop it. Collins's smile didn't move. Excuse me. I'm not going back out there, I said, and I heard my own voice shake. Anger flared, bright enough to cover fear for a second. You can assign someone else. Collins folded his hands. You're under contract. I'll eat the penalty. You can't afford to. Watch me. He leaned forward slightly. His voice softened, which somehow made it worse. Listen, people get spooked offshore all the time. Fog, equipment issues, weird acoustics. It happens. You had an incident. You came back. You're fine. I'm not fine. His eyes held mine. Calm, patient, like he was waiting out a child's tantrum. Then he said, very quietly, "What did you think you were doing, taking this job?" The question hit like a slap because it wasn't rhetorical. It was a reminder. You don't sign on to classified deep-sea listening projects because you're naive. You sign on because you're willing to not know things. You sign on because you can swallow weirdness. I looked down at my hands. My knuckles were white. Collins stood. 3 nights. Don't be late. When I left the building, the air outside smelled like low tide and diesel. Gulls screamed overhead. A fisherman on the pier was gutting something, the knife flashing. the blood bright against gray boards. The normalness of it made me dizzy. I drove home, and the whole way I kept seeing circles. A puddle in the road reflecting a streetlight. A manhole cover. A life ring hung on a dock post. Everything round looked like an eye. That night I called my brother. He answered on the third ring, voice groggy. "Hey," he said. "You get back okay?" I almost told him. I swear to God, I almost did. I wanted to dump it all into his lap, like confession would make it lighter. Instead, I said, "Yeah, I'm back." He was quiet a second. "You sound like shit." "Thanks." "No, like you okay?" I stared at my window. In the distance, beyond the buildings, I could see a sliver of water reflecting city light. The harbor, always there like a dark thought. "I don't know," I admitted. He exhaled smoke. I could hear it. "You want me to come down?" "No." "You sure?" I swallowed hard. "Promise me something." "Yeah. If I call you in the middle of the night and I sound off, you pick up? No matter what. You don't send me to voicemail." He didn't joke this time. "Okay, I promise." I hung up and sat in my kitchen, listening to my refrigerator hum and the distant, faint sound of traffic like waves. 3 nights later, I was back on the dock with my duffel, staring at the crew boat like it was a coffin with an outboard motor. Rivas was there. He looked worse. Dark circles under his eyes. His jaw clenched like he'd been grinding his teeth nonstop. "You're back," he said flatly. "Apparently," I said. He spat into the water. "We're taking a different route." "Good." "Well, wasn't there." "Where's Lyle?" I asked. Rivas didn't look at me. "Quit." Just like that. Rivas shrugged, stiff. Said he's done. Said the ocean can keep its secrets. I stared at the black water between the pilings. "Smart." Rivas snorted, but there was no humor. "Get on." We pushed off. The harbor fell behind us. The buoy bell clanged. The shore lights faded. The whole ride, I kept waiting for fog, kept tasting metal, kept listening for that pinging. The ocean stayed calm. The sky stayed clear. No mist, no wall of white, just open dark water and the boat's steady engine and Rivas' silence. For a moment, just a moment, I thought maybe I'd broken the spell by acknowledging it. Maybe it had been a freak one-time thing. Maybe my brain had made a monster out of exhaustion and fear. Then the GPS screen flickered, just once quick like a blink. And in that flicker, I saw a pale circle on the display where our route line should have been, rotating slowly. "Found," the whisper seemed to suggest without words. I didn't tell Rivas. I didn't tell anyone. I sat there with my hands gripping the bench, so hard my fingers hurt, and I watched the water. We were headed back out to the node, back to the place where the ocean had gone silent, back to whatever had looked at me through that ring and decided I was worth remembering. Rivas didn't bring a replacement deckhand. He brought a kid. That's not me talking shit. He had to be 22, maybe 23, cheeks still smooth in that way that says you haven't lived long enough to develop permanent worry lines. His name was Keen. He wore brand new foul weather gear and boots that hadn't been chewed up by salt yet. He had that eager, tense look like he'd been told this was a big opportunity and he was terrified of screwing it up. Rivas didn't even introduce us. He just nodded at Keen and jerked his chin at me. "This is the tech," Rivas said, like I was a piece of equipment. Keen offered a hand anyway. "Hey, nice to meet you." His grip was too firm. Nervous. I shook it. "Yeah." Keen glanced at the water, then at the horizon like he didn't like the way the dark sat on it. "So, we're doing a node maintenance run?" Rivas lit him up with one look. "You ask questions a lot." Keen swallowed. "No, sir." Rivas turned away. Then stopped. Keen looked at me like, what the hell is his problem? I didn't give him anything back. I didn't want to be the guy who reassures the new kid everything's fine, because everything wasn't fine. I stowed my duffel like muscle memory, even though my stomach felt like it was trying to climb out through my throat. The boat smelled the same as last time, diesel, wet rope coffee, but now the smell had an edge to it, like oil that's been overheated, like something scorched. Rivas pushed off. Harbor lights shrank behind us. The ocean opened up, black and indifferent. Keen tried to make small talk anyway, because young people always do when they're scared and they don't know what else to do. "So what do you actually..." he started. Rivas cut in without even turning around. He keeps it running. He nodded too fast. Right, right, cool. I sat on the bench outside the cabin and watched the wake peel away, white foam dissolving into dark. The night air was colder than last time. Salt stung my nose. I kept tasting that faint metallic tang anyway, like my tongue remembered it even if the air didn't have it. We took the different route, like Rivas promised, farther out, wider arc, avoiding the area where the fog had rolled in. We got almost all the way there without anything happening. Almost. About 40 minutes in, the boat's depth sounder pinged. Just once. A clean, familiar little tick through the speaker. Normal. The ocean is full of pings, fish finders, sonar, transponders. You stop noticing them after a while. But my stomach clenched so hard, I had to brace my hand on the rail. Keen heard it and shrugged. Someone fishing out here? Rivas didn't answer. Then it pinged again. Then again, but slightly off-timed. Too deliberate. Too spaced. Ping, ping, ping. Keen's smile faltered. He looked at Rivas. Is that us? Rivas's jaw tightened. No. I sat up straighter. Kill the sounder. Keen blinked. What? Just do it. I snapped sharper than I meant to. His eyes widened, offended and scared at the same time, and he hurried into the cabin. The pinging stopped. The ocean noise rushed back into the space it left, like the world exhaled. Rivas stared forward, hands locked on the wheel. His knuckles were pale. He didn't look at me, but his voice came out low. You feel that? I swallowed. Yeah. King came back out, confused. Why'd we? A smell hit us all at once. Not fish, not diesel, not seaweed. Ozone. That weird sharp smell you get before lightning, before a storm. Except the sky was clear and flat and full of stars. No clouds, no weather. Keen sniffed. What is that? Rivas said, shut up. The smell thickened anyway, crawling into my nose like something alive. My skin prickled. The hair on my arms stood up under my sleeves. Then the water around us changed. It didn't rise. It didn't swell. It just stilled. The surface went from gentle dark chop to a smooth, tight sheet, like someone ironed it. The wake behind us kept foaming because physics didn't stop, but everything beside the boat became unnaturally calm, glossy. The boat felt louder in it. The engine vibration felt wrong, like it was too big for the quiet it was cutting through. Keen leaned over the side and stared down. That's weird. I didn't want to look down. I looked anyway. The water was black, but not the normal ocean black. It was too clean, too empty. Like the darkness was deeper than it should be. Like we were floating over a hole. And then, in that hole, something reflected our running lights. Not a sparkle, not a fisheye flash. A shape, a pale oval, deep under the surface, drifting in perfect sync with us. Keen gasped. What the hell? Rivas jerked the wheel hard. The boat swerved. Spray kicked up. The oval vanished for half a second. Then it reappeared under us again, centered like it didn't care what we did with the boat. Like it was attached to us. My throat went dry. Rivas hissed, don't look down. Keen stared anyway, frozen. Is that a whale? It's not a whale, I said, and my voice sounded thin over the engine. Rivas punched the throttle. The boat surged forward. The water stayed glassy. The pale oval stayed under us. Keen backed away from the rail, stumbling. Okay, this is some optical thing, right? Like light refraction. Rivas barked inside. Keen rushed into the cabin. Rivas kept his eyes forward, but his mouth moved like he was chewing words. Finally, he spat them out at me, anger and fear mixed. You tell them you're not coming back? Yes. And they told me to. Rivas let out a bitter little laugh. Yeah, that's how it works. The glassy water extended ahead of us like a runway. Then fog rolled in. Not the gradual crawling mist from last time. It slammed down like a curtain. 1 second, stars. Next second, nothing but thick white, so dense our bow light hit it and died. The world shrank to the boat again. Keen shouted from inside, "What's happening?" Rivas didn't answer him. His eyes flicked to the GPS, to the compass, to the depth reading like he was trying to anchor himself in numbers. The engine coughed. My heart jumped into my throat. Rivas muttered, "No." The engine coughed again, harder, and the boat's forward push softened. King came back out, eyes wide. "Is the engine?" Rivas snapped, "Sit down and hold on." Keen sat. His hands gripped the bench. His knuckles went white. The fog pressed in so tight it felt like it had weight. Moisture beaded on my lips. The air tasted like pennies and old blood. Then the sound of the ocean started to fade again. It didn't disappear instantly. It slid away like a volume knob turning down. Wave slap got softer. Wind hiss got thinner. Engine rumble got muffled. Keen's voice trembled. "Why is it quiet?" Rivas's face was wet with sweat now. "Because it's here." The silence clicked into place like a lock. No sound. None. My ears popped hard. Pressure squeezed behind my eyes. I swallowed and felt my throat move, but heard nothing. The engine died. Rivas slammed the ignition. No sound, but I could feel the vibration fail. The boat's go dead under my boots. We drifted in white nothing. King started to sob silently. I could see it in his face, the way his chest hitched. He looked like he was screaming, but there was no noise. And then the hum started. That low, deep vibration came up through the hull like a god clearing its throat. My teeth buzzed. My stomach churned. The fog above us began to stream upward. My whole body went cold. I looked up. I didn't want to. I did anyway. The ring hung above us again, bigger than memory. Or maybe memory had shrunk it the first time to keep me sane. It sat in the sky like a massive bent circle of segmented metal, rotating slowly, its center churning with vapor that looked too thick to be air. The fog wasn't just clearing, it was being pulled into it. Moisture peeled off the rails and drifted upward. Even my breath felt like it wanted to go up and away. Keen looked up and his mouth formed a word that was probably no over and over. Rivas's hand went to the wheel even though the engine was dead, like he thought he could steer anyway. Below the ring, the water dimpled. Something rose, not breaking the surface like a dolphin, not cresting like a wave. The sea simply stopped being able to hide it. The glossy black form emerged, tall and wrong, water sliding off in sheets that didn't splash. Long arms, 2 long fingers, that blank pale oval where a face should be, reflecting the boat light like wet stone. It drifted toward us without moving. It didn't push water. It didn't make ripples. It just closed distance. My chest tightened with that same pull as last time, like my lungs wanted to pour themselves out toward it. Keen tried to stand. His legs wobbled. He clutched the cabin door frame like he was going to jump inside and hide from the ocean. Rivas grabbed him by the collar and yanked him down hard. Keen's head snapped back, his eyes filled with tears. Rivas's mouth moved in a furious silent shout, shaking Keen like he wanted to shake the fear out of him. Then the whisper hit, not in my ears, inside my skull, deep and intimate. "Found." Keen's eyes went unfocused for a second like he'd been punched. His hands flew to his temples. He screamed without sound, a horrible silent thing, and I knew he'd heard it too. The hum deepened. The thudding started under us, rhythmic pressure blows that made the boat quiver like it was sitting on a drum. The ring overhead began to rotate faster. Pale beams spilled out of it, bending in impossible arcs over the fog. Symbols crawled across the water's surface again, luminous and sickly, like the ocean was being written on. The symbols touched the cabin glass, and for a second the droplets of condensation on it arranged themselves into matching loops and angles, like the water was trying to copy the language. My phone in my pocket buzzed. I didn't want to look. I looked. The screen was black except for a rotating circle and that same word impressed into the pixels. "Found." Rivas reached out and slapped my phone out of my hand like it was a venomous insect. It hit the deck and skittered, screen still glowing. The pale circle spun. The word stayed. He pointed at me, then at the bow, then made a shoving motion like a move, like he was ordering me to do something. The thing hovered closer. The pull tightened until my body leaned forward involuntarily. Then the silence broke. Sound slammed back in so hard I flinched. Ocean roar. Wind. Keen's actual scream. High and raw. The engine clicking as Rivas cranked it again. The radio squawked to life on its own and poured out that wet chorus again, wailing like the sea had grown a voice and it hated us. And under the chorus, ping, ping, ping. Not our sounder, not our equipment. Something else pinging through the fog like it was marking us. Rivas roared at Keen, below. Now! Keen scrambled into the cabin, sobbing. I stumbled after him, grabbed by panic and that sick pull at once. Inside the cabin, the instrument panel lights were flickering in patterns that matched the symbols outside. The GPS route line warped into a circle for half a second, then snapped back. The compass needle spun like it didn't know what north was anymore. Rivas slammed the ignition. The engine coughed again, then caught. The vibration came back under my feet like a heartbeat restarting. Rivas punched the throttle and the boat surged forward. For a split second, I felt relief, like we were escaping again, like last time. Then the wheel jerked in Rivas's hands. The boat turned on its own, sharp, like an unseen hand had grabbed it. Rivas fought it, screaming curses, yanking the wheel back. The boat resisted him, like steering against a current you can't see. Keen cried, "It's turning! It's turning! I know!" Rivas shouted, spittle flying. The fog outside churned. The ring overhead rotated faster. The symbols on the water thickened, clustering into a denser pattern ahead of us. The boat snapped toward that pattern like a magnet. Rivas slammed the throttle back, trying to slow. The boat didn't slow. The engine screamed like it was being forced. The bow light cut into fog, and for a heartbeat, the world ahead cleared just enough for me to see what we were being driven toward. Not open water, a shape rising out of the sea, twisted metal trunks that grove again but denser here. A whole forest of crooked, corroded structures poking above the surface like the ribs of some gigantic wreck. Except they weren't wreckage. They were arranged, intentional, and in their center, hovering just above the surface, was a circular opening in the fog like an inverted version of the eye overhead. A hole in the world. Rivas screamed, and shoved the wheel hard to port. For one moment, the boat responded. The bow swung away from the grove. Spray hit the cabin windows. The engine strained. Then the pull hit like a fist. My lungs clenched. My vision tunneled. I felt my whole body lean toward the windshield, toward the symbol-thick water and the grove beyond like my bones wanted to go there. Keen vomited on the cabin floor. Rivas swore and fought the wheel, and I watched his hands, big, scarred hands, shake like he was losing. The boat hit something, a hard, sudden impact that threw all three of us forward. Metal shrieked. The hull rang like a bell. The bow dipped. Water slapped up over the deck in a sheet. Keen screamed again. Rivas slammed the throttle to neutral. The engine dropped. The boat rocked, drifting. For half a second, the fog thinned enough for me to look out and see what we'd struck. A metal trunk, twisted and wet, covered in barnacles and black slime. It rose out of the sea at a wrong angle, and where the aluminum hull scraped it, a smear of glossy black fluid clung like tar. The fluid didn't drip down. It slid updash, crawling along the trunk toward the air like it was being drawn into that ring overhead. Rivas stared at it, face slack with terror he couldn't bully. "Oh fuck." The radio screamed. The chorus rose and fell. Somewhere in it, under the wet warbling, I thought I heard words. Not English, something that sounded like pressure and bubbles and metal groaning. Then the thudding stopped. The hum softened. The ring overhead constricted slightly, like an eye narrowing in satisfaction. The boat rocked, and water started coming in. At first, it was just a trickle under the cabin door, a thin stream sliding across the deck. Then it thickened fast, pouring in from somewhere forward. Keen pointed, frantic. We're taking on water. Rivas snapped out of his stare. Breach, he shouted, and his voice was pure anger now, like he could yell the ocean back into place. He lunged for the emergency pump switch. The pump kicked on, whining, and for a second the water level stopped rising. Then the pump choked. The sound turned uneven. It sputtered like the engine had, like the same invisible hand was reaching in and killing anything mechanical that might save us. Keen sobbed, "Call in. Call the Coast Guard." Rivas slammed the radio mic. "Mayday, mayday," he started. The speaker answered immediately. Not dispatch, not a human voice. That chorus, louder, closer, and threaded through it was that steady pinging like a heartbeat. Ping, ping, ping. Rivas threw the mic down like it burned him. My mind raced, grabbing for procedures like life rafts. "We need to get out of this field," I said. "We need to back off, get distance." Rivas barked. With what? The engine's barely holding. Another wave slapped the bow. Water surged in again. Keen's eyes darted around wildly. "We're sinking." "We're not sinking." Rivas snapped automatically, then looked down at the water pooling around his boots and didn't sound so sure. The cabin lights flickered. For a second, the overhead fluorescent buzzed and the light shifted cold, and the shadows on the walls bent into shapes that made my head hurt. Outside the cabin window, through fog, something moved. A tall, glossy silhouette slid past the glass like a person walking outside a shower curtain. Keen saw it too. He made a strangled sound and backed away until he hit the console. Rivas grabbed a flare gun from under the seat. If that thing comes aboard, I didn't know what he thought a flare was going to do to something that didn't obey water. The silhouette stopped at the window. That pale oval face pressed close to the glass from outside. Not touching, not fogging it, just hovering there, perfectly still, as if it was studying us like fish in an aquarium. I froze. Every organ in my body felt like it was being squeezed in rhythm with that distant pinging. And then the whisper came again, louder, like it was right behind my eyes. "Found you." Keen screamed so hard his voice cracked, and I swear I saw his eyes flick toward the door like he was thinking about jumping into the sea rather than staying in that cabin with that thing staring. Rivas fired the flare through the open cabin side door without aiming. The flare hissed out into the fog, red light bleeding across white, and for a second the fog lit up enough to reveal the grove around us. Twisted metal trunks rising, hundreds of them, surrounding the boat like a cage. And in the red flare light, I saw something between those trunks under the water. Not the pale oval, bigger, shapes, structures, rows of something that looked like towers under the surface, tall spines rising up from the seafloor toward us. Not wreckage, but architecture, stacked segments, repeating patterns, angles that didn't look like any human build. It wasn't a natural reef. It wasn't a ship graveyard. It was a city, a drowned city that hadn't been drowned because the ocean was its native air. The flare's red light illuminated lines on those towers, glyphs, the same shifting symbols I'd seen on the water surface, carved or grown into the structures like writing in coral. The flare arced and died in the sea with a hiss. Darkness returned. Fog swallowed everything again. Keen was hyperventilating. What was that under us? Rivas didn't answer. He was staring at the window where the pale, oval face had been. It was gone. The water in the cabin rose another inch. My boots were soaked. Cold seeped up my legs. Rivas's voice went rough. "Get the survival suits." Keen blinked. "What? Suits?" Rivas shouted, and Keen scrambled, sloshing through water to the locker. I moved too, grabbing my own. Those bright orange immersion suits meant for abandoning ship in freezing water. I put one on in training, never in real life. Training never smells like panic and diesel and cold seawater in your socks. Keen struggled with the zipper, hands shaking so hard he couldn't line it up. "I can't." Rivas grabbed it and yanked. "Move." I forced my own suit on, heart hammering, every movement clumsy in the cramped cabin. The suit smelled like rubber and old sweat. My breath echoed inside the hood when I pulled it up. The boat rocked hard again. The bow dipped. Water surged higher. Rivas slammed the engine into reverse. For a second, the boat shuddered like it wanted to obey. Then it lurched forward instead, as if reverse didn't exist anymore. Rivas screamed, "No, no, no." The wheel jerked. The boat turned back toward the grove. Keen cried, "It's pulling us." My lungs clenched with that sick pull again. I felt like my chest was being vacuumed towards something outside. And then the silence came back, but only partially, like the world was being muted, not fully cut. The engine sound dulled. The ocean sound dulled. The thudding returned under us, closer now, each impact making the water in the cabin ripple. The fog above us peeled back. I looked up through the cabin window and saw not the ring in the sky. The ring was lowering. It wasn't overhead anymore. It was coming down toward the ocean's surface like an eyelid closing. The center churned with vapor, and now I could see that vapor wasn't just fog. It was water. It was ocean mist being twisted into a spiral, condensed, made dense, forming a hole. A mouth. Keen sobbed. That's coming down. Rivas's face was pure fury and despair. Not today, he hissed, like he was bargaining with a god. Something knocked the hull from below. A solid, deliberate thunk that reverberated up through the cabin floor and into my bones. Keen screamed. Rivas grabbed the flare gun again, then stopped like he realized how useless it was. Another knock, then another, faster. Thunk, 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 like something enormous tapping to get our attention. The water in the cabin surged again, and I realized the breach had widened. Cold sea poured in, relentless. We were going down. My brain did this weird calm thing right then, like it decided panic wasn't useful anymore. "We can't abandon ship in this fog," I said, voice muffled in the suit. "We'll lose each other." Rivas glared at me. "We stay, we die." Keen shook his head violently. "No, no, no, no." Another knock from below, harder. The boat lurched upward for a second like something had lifted it, then dropped. My stomach rose into my throat. Keen fell, splashing, and scrambled back up. In a moment the boat lifted, the fog outside thinned again. And I saw it, not the pale oval face. A massive curved surface under the water, right beside us, gliding past like the back of a whale. Except it wasn't organic. It was metallic, slick, covered in barnacles and those same symbols in long, etched lines. The curve was too perfect, too engineered. It was part of the ring, part of the eye, underwater. The ring wasn't only in the sky. It had an anchor in the sea, and we were right next to it. The idea hit me so hard I actually laughed once, a stupid broken sound inside my suit hood. Because of course the ocean wasn't being invaded by something from the sky. The ocean was looking up at us. Keen looked at me like I'd lost it. "What? What's funny?" I pointed down, shaking. "It's down there. It's always been down there." Rivas stared at me, eyes bloodshot. "What are you talking about?" "The node," I said, and my mouth tasted like pennies again. "It's not just listening. It's part of it." Rivas hesitated just long enough for the next knock to hit. Thunk! The lights flickered. The radio screamed. The boat lurched forward like it was being tugged on a leash. Rivas snapped into motion. "Out," he said, voice flat. "Now!" He opened the cabin door. Fog rolled in like smoke. The deck was slick, water sloshing. The grove's twisted trunks loomed in and out of visibility like teeth. Rivas grabbed a handheld strobe beacon from the emergency kit and yanked the pin. It started flashing bright white, cutting the fog in pulses. "Stay with the light," he shouted. Keen clung to Rivas's arm like a child. I stepped onto the deck, and the cold hit through the suit anyway, because fear makes cold deeper. The boat dipped again. Water surged over the deck. Rivas shoved Keen toward the stern where the life raft canister was mounted. "Pull it." Keen fumbled with the release latch. His hand shook. The canister popped loose and rolled, and for a second it almost went overboard. I grabbed it and slammed it back into place. "Here," I snapped, Pull this cord hard. Keen grabbed the painter line and yanked. The canister flipped, hit the water, and the raft inflated with a loud hump that felt obscene in the muffled half-silence. Bright orange, bobbing, a stupid human bubble of safety in a world that didn't want us. Rivas shouted in, "Go!" Keen scrambled toward it first, but the boat lurched and he nearly fell. I caught him by the suit shoulder and shoved him forward. He dropped into the raft, panting. Rivas turned to me. His eyes locked on mine in the strobe flashes, hard, haunted. "Jump," he said. I hesitated, because the water beside the boat wasn't normal water anymore. It was too still, too glossy, and in the strobe flashes, I could see beneath the surface. That pale oval face hovered down there, watching, waiting. My chest tightened with that pull again, like it wanted me in the water with it, like it didn't care about the raft. Rivas shoved me. "Jump." I jumped. Cold hit like a bat, even through the suit. I splashed into the raft, hands grabbing the rubber edge, pulling myself in. Rivas stayed on the boat 1 second longer, wrestling with something at the console, maybe trying to set the engine to neutral, maybe trying to do anything that mattered. Then the boat dipped hard. Rivas slipped. For a half second, he went down to his knees, hands scrabbling on wet deck. In the strobe flash, I saw a long, glossy black arm rise out of the sea right beside him, silent, water sliding off it in ribbons that didn't splash. The arm reached toward Rivas. Rivas saw it. His face twisted, not just fear, rage, pure animal refusal. He lunged for the raft, jumping. His boots hit the raft edge and tipped it. We nearly flipped. Keen screamed. Rivas fell into the raft, heavy, gasping. The glossy arm hovered for a second longer over the spot where he'd been. Then it slid back under the water without a ripple. The boat made a sound like metal tearing, real sound this time, and then it went. The bow sank first, disappearing into fog and water. The stern rose briefly like a hand giving the finger. Then the whole boat slipped under with a gurgling choke. The strobe light was still on, floating between us, flashing in the fog like a frantic heartbeat. Keen sobbed, rocking. "We're gonna die." Rivas grabbed him by the front of the suit and shook him once hard. "Stop that." Keen stared at him, shocked. "We're in the ocean, in fog, with that thing." Rivas leaned close, teeth bared. "You think screaming helps?" Keen shut up, but his eyes stayed wide and wild. I looked around. The fog was a wall. We had no horizon. The only sense of direction came from the faint glow of shore lights somewhere far away, and even those were swallowed. The silence wasn't complete now, but it was wrong. Sounds came through dampened, like we were inside someone's mouth. And under it all, that steady pinging persisted. Quiet but constant, like a sonar heartbeat. Ping, ping, ping. Keen pressed his hands to his ears. "Do you hear that?" Rivas stared into fog, jaw clenched. Yeah, the pinging wasn't coming from the raft. It wasn't from any device we had. It felt like it was coming from inside my skull. A marking signal, a way of saying, "Here you are." Rivas pulled the emergency radio from his suit pocket, a waterproof handheld. He thumbed it on. For a second, static hissed. Normal, blessedly normal. He pressed the transmit button. "Mayday, mayday, mayday, this is crew, transfer vessel." He stopped, eyes flicking. The boat's name didn't matter now. It was at the bottom. "We are adrift in a life raft." Vessel sank. Approximate position. He looked at me. I fumbled for my phone instinctively, then remembered it was on the deck somewhere underwater. "Shit," I said. Rivas swore, then kept going anyway, rattling off our last known coordinates from memory. The radio stayed quiet for a heartbeat. Then it answered. Not Coast Guard, not a dispatcher. That wet chorus poured through the tiny speaker, louder than it should have been, like the ocean itself had hijacked the frequency. Keen whimpered no. Rivas stared at the radio like he wanted to smash it. Between the warbling voices, I heard words again, almost, like the chorus was trying to approximate English. Something like, "Folk." The whisper hit in my skull, so hard I flinched. "Found you." Keen screamed and slapped the radio out of Rivas's hand. It hit the raft floor and kept playing, chorus spilling out, pinging, threading through it like a needle. Rivas grabbed it and shoved it into the water between his suit and the raft edge, trying to drown it. The sound muffled, but didn't stop. Like water couldn't drown water. The fog above us thinned in a circle. A perfect circle. My stomach dropped. The ring appeared again, but this time it wasn't overhead like the sky had given birth to it. It was just there suspended in fog, closer, lower, like it had followed us down to the surface. Its segments rotated slowly, the center churning with vapor water, pulling moisture upward. The air around us grew colder fast. Condensation formed on the raft's rubber in beads, and those beads trembled, then began to creep toward the center of the raft, as if drawn by gravity that wasn't gravity. Keen whispered, "It's looking at us." Rivas's voice came out hoarse. "Don't look up. Too late." I was already looking. Inside the ring's center, the vapor condensed into a shape for a second, like an iris focusing. And through that iris, I thought I saw something deeper than fog. Not sky, not stars. Dark water, far below, with structures rising like spines. The city, and moving through it, slow and massive, something that made the pale oval face look like nothing. A shadow like a continent shifting. The ring's hum rolled through the air and into my bones. The raft vibrated. The pinging sped up, matching the hum. Keen started praying. Not loud, not performative, just desperate little broken words. Rivas did something I didn't expect. He laughed, not a happy laugh. A harsh, bitter bark like he'd finally hit the edge of what a person can take. "You want us?" he shouted up at the ring. "Fine, come get us." Keen stared at him, horrified. "Rivas." Rivas grabbed the strobe, held it up like a weapon. "You think I'm scared? I've been in hurricanes. I've watched men die out here. You're not special." The ring's rotation slowed. The center's vapor thickened. The silence deepened again, sucking sound away until even Rivas's shout felt muffled. Then, very gently, the ring constricted like an eyelid closing, and the water around us rose. Not like a wave, like the sea itself decided to stand up. A smooth wall of water lifted around the raft, forming a bowl. The fog pressed inward too, thickening, making a dome. In the strobe flashes, the water wall looked like glass. We were inside a sphere of ocean. Keen screamed. I grabbed the raft edge, knuckles white, and my brain screamed, "This is impossible," over and over, like repeating it could change physics back. The pinging stopped. Everything stopped. Even my heartbeat felt like it froze. Then the whisper came, softer, closer than ever. "Not found you." Just one word, like a label being applied. "Mine." The water wall shimmered, and inside it, reflections appeared. Not reflections of us. Reflections of something else. Long shapes moving, pale ovals, glossy arms, sliding around the raft's bubble like sharks circling. Keen sobbed, "They're in the water." "They're not in the water," I whispered, because the horror wasn't that they were in it. The horror was that the water was them. Rivas's face twitched. His eyes went unfocused for a second, like he was hearing something that wasn't sound. His mouth moved, forming words he didn't speak. Then he jerked like someone yanked a string in his spine. His head turned slowly toward me, eyes glassy. And he smiled. It wasn't Rivas's smile. I'd never seen him smile in my life, but I knew this wasn't it anyway. It was too smooth, too empty. Keen shrank back. "Rivas." Rivas's voice came out wrong, flat, calm, like he was reading. "You're not supposed to hear it," he said. My skin went cold under the suit. "What?" Rivas tilted his head slightly, like the pale oval does, like he was copying a posture. "It's not for you. The node is for listening. Not for you. You listen back." Keen shook his head hard. "Stop. Stop it, man." Rivas's gaze fixed on Keen, and Keen went still like prey under a predator's stare. Rivas said softly, "It found you too." Keen screamed and lunged at Rivas, punching him in the chest. The raft rocked. The water bowl shimmered. Rivas didn't react like he'd been hit. He just reached out and grabbed Keen's wrist with unnatural steadiness. Keen screamed, "Let go!" Rivas tightened his grip. Keen's face twisted in pain. His suit creaked. He tried to yank away. I grabbed Rivas's arm and pulled. "Let him go." Rivas's eyes snapped to mine. For a second, there was something human there. Fear, confusion, like he was trapped behind his own face. He whispered, almost silently, "Don't." Then his eyes went blank again, and he shoved me back so hard I hit the raft edge and nearly went over. The water bowl responded like it was alive. The wall bulged inward slightly, pressing close like it wanted to swallow. Keen sobbed, "Please." Rivas leaned close to Keen, forehead almost touching. And in the strobe flashes, I saw water beads forming on the inside of Rivas's suit hood like sweat, except it wasn't sweat. It looked like condensation from cold, deep water. Rivas whispered something into Keen's face. Keen froze. His eyes widened. Then his expression changed, like fear flipped into wonder. He smiled, slow, dazed. "Oh," Keen breathed. "Oh, it's beautiful." I stared at him. Keen's eyes weren't focusing on us anymore. They were staring through fog at something only he could see. Tears ran down his cheeks. He laughed softly, breathy. "They've been down there forever," he murmured. "They built it. They built it before we crawled out of mud. And we put our stupid little microphones down there and thought," he giggled. "We thought we were listening." Rivas's smile widened. The water bowl tightened again, the wall creeping closer, like the ocean was closing a fist. I grabbed Keen by the collar and shook him. "Snap out of it." Keen blinked, and for half a second he looked like himself again, terrified, confused. Then his eyes rolled upward, and he went limp like his strings were cut. My stomach dropped. "Keen!" Rivas reached down and put 2 fingers on Keen's neck like checking a pulse, absurdly calm. He looked at me and said, in that wrong, flat voice, "He's going home." "No," I snarled, and something ugly and desperate rose in me. "No one's going anywhere." I grabbed the strobe, yanked it out of the raft floor, and slammed it against Rivas's head. The plastic cracked. The strobe flickered wild. Rivas jerked, startled. The water bowl shimmered, destabilizing for a second, like the system didn't like sudden chaos. I hit him again, harder. Rivas's hood split at the seam. Cold water beaded along the tear. His eyes blinked fast, and for a split second he was Rivas again. Hurt, furious, confused. "What?" he started. "Fight it," I shouted. "Fight it." Rivas's jaw clenched. He shook his head violently like trying to clear water from his ears. The ring overhead pulsed. The hum deepened. The water bowl tightened again like it was annoyed. I slammed the strobe into the raft edge, breaking it completely, and in the sudden darkness, the only light was faint gray fog glow and whatever cold luminance leaked from the ring. In the dark, the reflections on the water wall changed. They stopped showing pale ovals. They showed me. Not my face distorted, stretched, eyes too far apart, mouth too wide, skin too smooth like wet clay. Like the water was imagining me. I felt my stomach flip. "No," I whispered. The whisper answered inside my skull. "Yes, mine." I clenched my teeth until my jaw hurt. I forced my mind to grab onto something real. The cold suit against my skin, the rubber raft under my knees, Keen's limp weight, Rivas's ragged breathing. Rivas groaned, clutching his head. His human eyes were back now, bloodshot and terrified. He looked up at the ring and then at me. His mouth formed words he didn't want to say. It at once. Another wave of pressure hit like a deep dive gone wrong. My ears screamed. My vision sparkled at the edges. Rivas grabbed my arm hard. "We need to." He stopped, eyes flicking past me. "Behind you." I turned. In the water bowl, right behind the raft, the pale oval face appeared. Not outside the wall, inside it, hovering in the water like it had simply decided the barrier didn't apply. It was close enough I could see the surface texture of it, smooth, pale, reflective like wet ceramic. No pores, no seams, just a blank oval that stole my sense of scale. A glossy black arm rose from the water, long fingers curling slowly, reaching toward Keen's limp body. Rivas lunged, grabbing Keen and pulling him toward the center of the raft. The arm didn't hurry. It touched the raft edge lightly, and the rubber depressed under its fingertips like it was heavy reel. Water slid off its fingers upward, crawling toward the ring like everything wet wanted to return to that eye. I felt the pull in my chest intensify until I couldn't breathe right. My lungs refused to fully fill. Panic bubbled. The arm reached again. I grabbed the emergency knife strapped to my suit, a cheap serrated thing meant for cutting lines, and slashed at the glossy fingers. The blade hit like it struck rubber-coated steel. No cut, no blood, just a vibration that traveled up my arm and made my bones ache. The arm paused. The pale oval tilted, studying. Then the whisper hit so hard I nearly blacked out. Not words this time. A feeling. A memory that wasn't mine. Deep pressure, crushing darkness, the endless weight of water overhead, and under it all, a calm intelligence like the ocean itself thinking. My mouth opened and I gagged, sucking air that tasted like salt. The arm withdrew slightly, like it was satisfied I'd felt that. Then the ring overhead snapped tighter. The water bowl collapsed. Not violently, like a curtain falling. The wall of water dropped back into the sea, splashing hard, and suddenly we were just a raft in fog again, bobbing on normal chop. Sound returned fully. Keen's limp body thumped as the raft rocked. Rivas cursed. I gasped, sucking in air like I'd been drowning. The ring overhead was still there, but higher now, fog streaming into it again in elegant spirals. The pale, oval face vanished beneath the surface without a ripple. The pinging started again, slower now like a satisfied heartbeat. Ping, ping. Rivas grabbed the handheld radio again, hands shaking. He pressed transmit, voice ragged. Mayday, please, anyone. Static hissed. Then, unbelievably, a human voice cracked through. Raft calling Mayday, say again. Rivas froze like he didn't trust it. He looked at me, eyes wide with desperate hope and terror. I snatched the radio. Mayday, we're in a life raft, vessel sank, 3 souls, 1 unconscious. We need immediate assistance. The voice responded, clearer now. Copy. Stand by. What is your position? I didn't have coordinates. I didn't have a GPS. My phone was gone, but the fog thinned just enough in that moment for me to see a dim blinking light to our east, a navigational buoy, faint but real. We're near a buoy, I said quickly, voice shaking. Flashing red, period, I counted in my head. Every 4 seconds. The voice paused. Copy. Rescue asset en route. Maintain visual on buoy. Activate any strobe. I stared at the broken strobe in the raft. Strobe failed. Copy. Use whistle, flare, any available signal. Rivas fumbled for a flare in the emergency pack with shaking hands. Keen lay limp between us, pale under fog glow. I pressed 2 fingers to his neck, pulse faint, but there. He wasn't dead. Not yet. Rivas whispered, "You think it's really them?" I didn't answer, because I didn't know. Because the ocean can mimic sounds too. The way waves can sound like voices when you're tired. But this voice was too clean, too procedural, too human. Rescue came fast. Too fast for the Coast Guard from shore, honestly. Within 20 minutes, a larger vessel's lights cut through fog, bright and steady. A searchlight found us, and for the first time since this started, I felt the fog behave like normal fog under a human beam. A crew hauled us aboard. Real hands, real voices, real curses and commands. King got lifted on a stretcher. A medic slapped oxygen on him, checked his pupils, muttered hypothermia and shock. Rivas sat on deck, head in his hands, rocking slightly like a man trying not to break. I stood there dripping, suit heavy, and watched the rescue vessel's wake cut through the fog. The ring overhead was gone. The ocean noise was normal. For a few minutes, I almost believed we'd escaped. Then the rescue boat's sonar pinged. Just once. Not the regular ping of their equipment warming up. A clean, deliberate ping that made every hair on my body rise. The crew around me didn't react. Nobody flinched. Nobody swore. Like they didn't hear it. Like it was only meant for me. I turned slowly, scanning fog behind us, expecting to see the eye, the ring, the impossible still water. I saw nothing, but I felt it. That pressure behind my shoulder, like someone standing too close. That sense of being watched without eyes. A day later, I was in a different beige room, sitting across from a different calm face. Not Collins this time. A civilian in a suit, hair too neat, smile too practiced. He slid a paper cup of water toward me like he was being kind. I didn't touch it. "I'm sorry about your incident," he said. "We're grateful you're alive." I stared at his cup of water. The surface inside, it was perfectly still. "I'm done," I said. My voice came out hoarse. "I quit." The suit smiled wider. "You can't." I looked up. "Watch me." The suit smile didn't move. "You signed agreements. You have clearances. You have obligations. You got people killed." I snapped, and my chest tightened as anger tried to cover fear. "That kid, he's alive," the suit said smoothly. "Recovering." Rivas's boat sank. "A boating incident," the suit said. I laughed once sharp. "A boating incident?" The suit leaned forward. "We're going to ask you a few questions." "No, we already are," he said, and his voice stayed polite. I felt that metallic taste flood my mouth again. I swallowed hard. He asked, "Did you see any uncharted debris?" I said nothing. He asked, "Did you experience any auditory anomalies? Tones? Vibrations? Voices?" I clenched my jaw. He asked, "Did you interact with any unknown substance? Black fluid?" I flinched involuntarily. His eyes sharpened. "Tell me about that." I stared at him, and suddenly, behind his neat smile, I imagined a pale, oval face. A blank, reflective surface where human features should be. My stomach rolled. "I'm not talking," I said. His smile softened. "You're tired. Traumatized. It's okay." He slid the paper cup closer. "Drink." The water in the cup trembled slightly. Not from my movement. It trembled like it had a pulse. I shoved the cup away, so hard it sloshed. The suit didn't even blink. "We'll give you some time." They kept me there for hours. They asked questions in different ways. They tried gentle. They tried stern. They tried bored. They tried sympathetic. I gave them almost nothing. Eventually, they let me go home under the condition I'd remain available. Translation: "We own you." Rivas didn't answer my calls. He didn't have a number I could reach. When I asked, they said patient privacy. Like this was a normal accident and not whatever the hell it was. I went home to my apartment near the harbor and tried to pretend I still lived in the same world. The first night, I ran the shower as hot as it would go and sat on the floor with my head against the tub because I didn't trust silence anymore. Water hit porcelain, loud, steady, comforting. Then under the shower roar, I heard it. Ping. Just once clean and sharp, like a sonar ping bouncing off the inside of my skull. I turned the water off fast. The bathroom went quiet. My ears rang. I waited for another ping. Nothing. I laughed again, bitter, then realized my laugh sounded wrong in that small tiled room, like it was being sucked slightly dampened. I stared at the drain. A thin ring of water circled it, swirling. Perfect circle. My throat tightened. I backed out of the bathroom without taking my eyes off that swirl like it might blink. Over the next few days, I tried to rationalize it. Trauma does weird shit to your senses. Hypervigilance. Auditory hallucinations. PTSD. I read articles at 3 in the morning, eyes gritty, trying to anchor myself in medical language. But the problem wasn't just sounds. It was water. Water started behaving wrong around me. A glass left on the counter would develop condensation in a circle, like an iris pattern, even if the room was dry. My sink would drip at night, even though the faucet was tight, each drop spaced like a heartbeat. Plink, plink, plink. Not random. Deliberate. When I boiled pasta, bubbles would rise in spirals that made my eyes ache. I stopped boiling pasta. I stopped drinking water unless it came in a sealed bottle because tap water started tasting like pennies. I'd be walking past the harbor and the tide would slap the pilings like normal. Then for one heartbeat, it would go silent, like someone hit mute, and I'd feel that pull in my chest, and that metallic taste would flood my mouth, and I'd have to grab the railing to keep from stepping forward. People around me didn't notice. It was always only meant for me. I tried to stay away from the water. That sounds stupid, living in a coastal city, but I tried. Took routes inland, avoided the pier, kept my curtains closed so I couldn't see the harbor glow at night. But water is everywhere. It's in pipes. It's in air. It's in your body. I started hearing faint gurgles in the walls at night, like the plumbing was whispering. Sometimes the gurgles would stop, and I'd hear a soft, wet warble, like the radio chorus trying to crawl through the pipes. One night, I woke up because my apartment was too cold. Not normal winter cold. A deep cold that felt like it came from below, like someone had opened a hatch under my bed into deep water. My breath fogged. I sat up, heart hammering, and I heard it. Ping, ping. Slow, steady, distant like sonar from far away. I slid out of bed and padded to the kitchen, following it like a stupid animal. The pinging seemed louder near the sink. I turned on the light. The sink basin was full of water. I hadn't left it running. The stopper was down, but I never used it. The basin was filled to the brim, perfectly still, black in the low light like it was a tiny ocean. My stomach dropped. In the center of that black water, something pale reflected the overhead light. Not my face. A smooth, pale oval, deep under the surface, staring up. I stumbled back and hit the counter hard enough to rattle dishes. The water didn't ripple. The oval didn't move. Then, very gently, the water surface dimpled as if something beneath it exhaled. A whisper bloomed inside my skull, intimate and cold. Found. I slammed my hand down on the sink faucet and yanked it open, like more water would drown it. Water blasted in, splashing, rippling, and the pale oval vanished under chaos. I didn't stop. I ripped the stopper up, draining the basin fast, water swirling down in a vortex. As it drained, the swirl formed a perfect ring around the drain, like an iris closing. I gagged. I shut the faucet off and stood there shaking, staring at the empty sink like it might fill itself again. I didn't sleep after that. I called my brother at dawn. He answered groggy. "What's wrong?" "I need you," I said. My voice cracked. "I need you to come down." He sat up fast. I could hear it. "Are you okay?" "No," I admitted. "I'm not." He didn't ask questions. He just said, "I'll be there." When he arrived later that morning, he looked at me and his face fell. "You look like hell," he said, and there was no insult in it. "Just worry." "Yeah," I said. He stepped into my apartment and sniffed. "Why does it smell like low tide in here?" My mouth went dry. "I don't know," I lied. He wandered toward the kitchen, and my heart started hammering. "Don't." He opened the cabinet under the sink like he was looking for something to drink. "You got coffee?" I grabbed his arm too hard. "Don't fuck with the sink." He stared at me. "What?" I released him. My hand trembled. "Just don't." He studied me for a long moment. "Okay." "Jesus." We sat on my couch. I tried to explain without sounding insane. I tried to pick words that wouldn't make him look at me like I needed to be committed. "I saw something offshore," I said finally. "On a job." He raised an eyebrow. "Like a shipwreck? A dead body?" I swallowed. "No." His face tightened. "Then what?" I stared at my hands. Something that shouldn't exist. He snorted, but it wasn't mocking. It was nervous. "Dude, I'm serious." He leaned forward. "Okay, tell me." So I did in pieces. Fog. Silence. The ring. The faceless thing. The whisper. The boat sinking. The city under the water. As I talked, his expression shifted from skepticism to discomfort to real fear, the kind that makes you regret asking. When I described the pale oval face under my sink, he went very still. "Maybe you're having trauma stuff, he said carefully. Maybe, I said, but it's not just in my head. He rubbed his face. Why you? Why is it? I don't know. I snapped, an anger flare because I wanted an answer too. Maybe because I looked at it. Maybe because I heard it. Maybe because those idiots put a listening device on something that doesn't like being listened to. He frowned. You think it's connected to your job? I know it is. He was quiet, thinking. Then he said, okay, so what do we do? That question broke something in me because it was so simple, so human, like there was a normal solution to this. I don't know. I whispered and my eyes burned. I don't know what to do. He reached out and squeezed my shoulder. Then we figured it out. For a few hours, I almost felt okay just having him there. Having another person in my space, breathing, talking, making noise that wasn't pings and whispers. We ordered greasy food. We watched dumb TV. He made me laugh once, and it felt like air in my lungs again. Then he got up to use the bathroom. I froze on the couch as soon as I heard the bathroom door close, because my brain started screaming. Water. Pipes. Sink. Drain. I heard the toilet flush. I heard the faucet run. Normal sounds. Then, under them, so faint I almost thought I imagined it. Ping. My brother shouted from the bathroom. Your water pressure sucks. I didn't answer. He came back out, wiping his hands on his jeans. Dude, you need to call maintenance. I stared at his wet hands. Water dripped from his fingers onto my carpet, leaving dark spots. The droplets formed a line as they fell, evenly spaced. Blink, blink, blink. Like a heartbeat. My brother noticed my stare. What? Nothing. I said too fast. He frowned. No, seriously. What? I forced myself to breathe. I want to get away from here. Okay, he said. Come up to my place. My throat tightened. His place was right on the coast, closer to the water than mine. The idea of being there made my skin crawl. Not there, I said. Inland. Somewhere inland. He blinked. Like where? A hotel. A motel, I said. Some shitty place off the highway. I don't care. Just away. He watched me, then nodded slowly. Okay. We packed quickly. I threw clothes in a bag with shaking hands. My brother kept glancing around like he expected something to jump out at him. As we left, I hesitated at the door and looked back at my kitchen sink. It was empty, dry, normal, but I could smell low tide anyway. We drove inland, away from the harbor glow, away from the salt air, away from the sound of waves. The farther we got, the easier I could breathe. The metallic taste faded. The pressure behind my eyes eased. My brother kept talking, trying to keep me anchored, joking about my paranoia, but gently, like he was trying to pull me toward normal without snapping anything. We found a motel off an exit, the kind with thin walls and a flickering sign. The parking lot smelled like hot asphalt and cigarettes, not brine. The air was dry. I felt the tiniest bit of relief stepping into that stale room because there was no ocean nearby, no harbor, no fog, no black water. Then I heard it, in the bathroom, a drip, blink, blink, blink. My brother looked at me. I looked at him. He whispered, no. I swallowed hard. Tell me you hear that. He nodded, eyes wide. Yeah. My stomach dropped because that meant it wasn't just me. He moved toward the bathroom, slow, cautious, like he was approaching a wild animal. Don't, I hissed. He stopped. We can't just. The drip stopped. Silence. My brother and I stood frozen in that cheap motel room, listening hard. Nothing. Then the toilet gurgled. A long, wet gargle that didn't sound like plumbing. It sounded like something clearing its throat. My brother backed away from the bathroom. His face went pale. What the fuck is that? I told you, I whispered, and my voice shook so hard it barely came out. I told you. The bathroom door creaked open slowly. We hadn't touched it. The air inside looked darker than it should be. My brother grabbed the lamp off the nightstand like a weapon. I grabbed my phone, stupidly, like it could save us. The whisper hit my skull, sudden and intimate. Found you. Not just me. Both of us. My brother's eyes went unfocused for a second, like he'd been punched. He staggered. No, I didn't. He clutched his head. I didn't see it. I didn't. The bathroom mirror fogged instantly, as if someone had breathed hot, wet air on it. In the fog, a circle cleared, perfectly round like an iris opening. And in that clear circle, instead of reflecting our cheap motel room, it reflected black water. Deep black water under dim greenish light, like a submersible camera feed. And drifting toward the camera, slow and deliberate, was that pale, oval face. My brother screamed and swung the lamp at the mirror. Glass shattered, falling inward. The reflection flickered and vanished in shards. The room filled with the smell of brine and ozone. My phone vibrated violently in my hand. I looked down. The screen was black except for that rotating pale circle. Found. My brother grabbed my wrist, nails digging into the suit of my skin. "We need to go," he rasped. "Where?" I snapped, panic turning mean. "Where the hell do you go when it's in the water in your fucking pipes?" His eyes were wild. "I don't know. Just out. Move." We ran. We left our bags. We left everything. We sprinted out of that motel room into dry night air, and for a second it felt like stepping out a nightmare. Then the motel's outdoor pool lights flickered on. Nobody was near the switch. The pool was empty, cover half off, water black under the lights. The surface of the pool went still. Then, right in the center, a circle formed, water swirling as if a drain had opened where there was no drain. My brother froze mid-run, staring. His mouth hung open. Inside my skull, the whisper bloomed again, calm as the sea. "Found!" My brother grabbed me and yanked me away, and we ran to the car, stumbling, shaking, fumbling keys like idiots in a horror movie. The engine started on the second try. My brother punched the gas, tires squealing, and we tore out of the lot. In the rearview mirror, the motel sign flickered. For half a second, the flicker made it look like an eye blinking. We drove until dawn, until the sky went gray and my brother's hands stopped shaking enough to grip the wheel normally. We ended up at a diner off a highway, fluorescent lights buzzing, coffee smelled thick and burnt. The kind of place that feels like it exists outside time. We sat in a booth and stared at each other over mugs we didn't drink because water, liquid, felt like poison now. My brother's voice was rough. Okay, I echoed. He swallowed hard. "So, this thing can reach through water?" "Yes." "Any water?" I nodded. He stared at his mug like it might swirl into a circle. "Then what the hell do we do?" I thought about it. Really thought. Not emotionally. Logically. Water is everywhere. In pipes. In clouds. In your own body. You can't avoid it unless you die, and even then you're mostly water. My stomach turned. I said slowly, "It's not just reaching through water." My brother looked up, eyes bloodshot. "What do you mean?" "I think water is how it looks," I whispered. "Like it's a lens." He frowned. "A lens to what?" I remembered the glimpse through the ring. Dark water, city spines, something massive moving like a continent. "Something under," I said. "Something deep." My brother stared, then shook his head fast. Nope. I'm not doing cosmic ocean god bullshit before breakfast." I almost laughed, and the fact that I almost laughed made me want to cry. He leaned forward, voice low and fierce. "Listen to me. You're not alone. Okay? You're not doing this by yourself. We go to someone. A doctor. A therapist. Someone. And tell them what?" I snapped. "That the ocean is stalking me through my sink drain." He flinched, then pushed back, anger flashing because fear makes people mean. "Then what? You want to just run forever? You want to dry out the planet?" I stared at him, jaw clenched. We both knew he was right. I rubbed my face, exhausted. "I don't know." He exhaled hard. "Okay, and we go back to your place. We get your stuff. We figure out something. Maybe we move inland for real. Like Arizona. Desert." I imagined living in a desert, afraid of a glass of water, afraid of my own saliva. The thought made me dizzy. "Okay," I said anyway, because what else was there? We drove back toward the city later that day. The closer we got to the coast, the tighter my chest felt, like invisible pressure increasing. My brother noticed. Breathe. I am. You're not. I tried. When we reached my apartment building, the air smelled like salt again. The harbor was only a few blocks away. I could almost hear gulls. My brother parked. We climbed the stairs. My hallway smelled damp. I froze outside my door, keys in hand. My brother looked at me. What? I smell it, I whispered. He sniffed. His face tightened. Yeah. Low tide. Brine. Ozone. Like the ocean was inside my walls again, waiting. We went in anyway. The apartment looked normal at first glance. Same couch. Same dishes. Same stupid little plant in the window that I always forgot to water. But the air felt heavy. Damp. Like fog without fog. My brother walked straight to the kitchen. Let's just grab your. The sink was full. Black water. To the brim, perfectly still. My brother stopped dead. No. In the reflection on that black surface, I saw not my ceiling light, but a pale circle. Not the oval face yet. Just the circle, rotating slowly like an iris adjusting. My phone buzzed in my pocket, even though I hadn't felt it vibrate all day. I didn't take it out. I didn't need to. Inside my skull, the whisper blossomed, almost gentle. Found you. My brother backed away, shaking his head hard like he could shake the words out. Fuck this, he rasped. Fuck this. We're leaving. Now. He grabbed my arm and yanked me toward the door. I moved, but something in me snagged, because the pull in my chest wasn't just fear anymore. It was curiosity again, that sick need to look, to understand, to see it fully. The same part of me that got out of the boat the first night. I hate that part of myself. It's why I'm here. My brother dragged me, and I stumbled, but my eyes stayed on the sink. The water's surface dimpled slightly. Something pale moved under it. I heard, very faintly, not in my ears but in my bones. Ping, ping, ping. My brother slammed the apartment door behind us, and we ran down the stairs like a fire alarm was going off. We didn't go back. We didn't pack. We didn't grab anything else. We just left. We ended up at my brother's place because he couldn't think of anywhere else that felt safe, and I didn't argue because I was too tired to fight. His house sat right above the rocky shore. You could see the ocean from his back steps. Normally, it was beautiful in a rough New England way. Gray water, white foam, gulls screaming. Now it felt like standing on the edge of a mouth. We sat inside with every tap turned off, every drain plugged like that mattered. We drank bottled water sparingly, like it was medicine. The first 2 days passed in a weird tense calm. No mirrors circles, no sink filling, no whispers. My brother tried to convince himself we were okay. He kept talking about moving inland, about selling his place, about how his girlfriend leaving didn't matter anymore because this was bigger. I barely spoke. I sat on his back steps at night and stared at the ocean because avoiding it didn't work, and I couldn't stop thinking about that city under the water, those towers, those glyphs. If something lives down there, if something built that, then what do we do when we dropped microphones on it? What do we wake up? On the third night, a storm rolled in. Not dramatic thunder and lightning, just a heavy coastal storm. Low clouds, steady rain, wind that made the house creak. The ocean turned into a black, churning sheet. My brother was in the living room, pacing, chain-smoking by the back door, with the porch light on like light could protect us. I stood at the window watching rain slice sideways. Water everywhere. In the air. On the glass. On the ground. I felt that metallic taste creep back into my mouth. My brother noticed my expression. What? I feel it, I whispered. He went pale. No. Outside. The rain seemed to hesitate for one heartbeat. Then it changed. Instead of falling in chaotic streaks, the raindrops began to curve slightly, spiraling. My stomach dropped. The wind shifted. The sound of rain on the roof dulled. The ocean noise outside softened. My brother whispered, "Oh no." Above the house, the clouds began to swirl. Not normal storm swirl. Not wind-driven. A deliberate circular motion, like water going down a drain. The swirl tightened into a ring shape, a massive circle hanging low over the coastline. The rain around it didn't fall. It lifted, mist rising upward, drawn into the center. The sound of the storm vanished like someone shut the world's mouth again. My brother's lips moved in a silent curse. The ring's center cleared, not sky behind it. Black water, deep black water, lit faintly from below, with those spines, those towers, rising. The city was looking up through the storm. The whisper hit my skull, louder than ever, and this time it wasn't just inside my head. It felt like it vibrated through my bones, through my blood. Found you. My brother dropped to his knees like his strings were cut. His hands flew to his ears. His face twisted in agony. I staggered back from the window, heart hammering, mouth open in a silent scream. The house creaked as if pressure changed around it. The windows fogged instantly, condensation forming in perfect circular patterns. Water started dripping from the ceiling, not from a leak, from nowhere. Cold drops falling in an even rhythm. Blink, blink, blink. My brother looked up at me, eyes wide, and in them I saw the same wonder Keen had right before he went limp. No, not him. I grabbed my brother's shoulders and shook him hard. Stay with me. His lips moved. No sound. Then his voice finally came out, faint, like it was being pulled away. It's singing, he whispered. I heard it too then, under the silence. Not through ears, through teeth and bone. That wet chorus. That deep, impossible song like wails through broken machines, like a city groaning underwater. The ring in the clouds constricted like an eyelid closing. The ocean beyond the house went still despite the storm. The waves froze mid-chop for half a heartbeat, glassy. In that glassy surface, I saw a pale oval reflection. Not the clouds, not the house. A blank face under the water, looking up. My chest tightened with that pull, and I realized with a sick clarity that it didn't need me offshore. It didn't need the node. It didn't need fog. It had mapped me, like sonar, like a ping bouncing off flesh. It knew exactly where to find me now, wherever there was water, meaning everywhere. My brother whispered, eyes unfocused, "We should go to it." I slapped him, hard. The sound was weird in the muffled air, like it didn't want to exist, but it existed enough. My brother's head snapped to the side. He blinked fast, tears spilling. His eyes refocused on me, horrified. "What?" he croaked. "Don't," I hissed. "Don't you fucking dare." He sucked in a breath, shaking. I felt. "I know," I said, and my voice cracked. "I know." The ring above the house rotated slowly. The center cleared more, showing deeper water, and for a second, I saw that massive shadow shift again, far below, like a continent turning in its sleep. The whisper softened, almost tender. "Mine." The pull in my chest intensified until my body leaned forward without permission, like my bones wanted to walk out the door, down the steps, into the still black ocean. My brother grabbed me, nails digging into my arms. "Don't," he sobbed. "Don't go." I fought my own body. I clenched my muscles, trembling, forcing myself to stay. The silence tightened further. The sound of the storm was gone completely now. The house was a bubble of dead air, like we were underwater without being underwater. The ring's center blinked. I don't know how else to say it. The vapor water iris constricted and opened once, a slow blink, and when it opened, the city under the water looked closer. Like the distance between here and there had shortened. Like the ocean under my brother's house had become a doorway. My mouth moved, and I realized I was whispering, "No, no, no." The whisper answered inside my skull, calm and patient. "Yes, found you." And then the water itself inside the house responded. The glass of water on the coffee table, one my brother had forgotten, trembled and began to swirl. The swirl formed a perfect ring. The condensation on the window cleared in a circle, making an iris shape. The drip from the ceiling sped up, plink, 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 like a heartbeat accelerating. The porch light flickered. In the flicker, the reflection on the wet window made it look like a pale, oval face pressed against the glass from outside. Featureless, shining. My brother sobbed, "What do you want?" No answer in words. Just that pull. Just that ownership. I made a decision then, not because it was smart, but because my body needed an action to survive. If the ocean was a lens, if the water was how it looked, then I needed to break the lens. I grabbed the heaviest thing near me, my brother's cast iron fireplace poker, and swung at the window. The glass shattered outward, rain and wind blasting in. Sound snapped back and violently. Storm roar, wind howl, ocean crash. All the normal chaos rushing and like life returning. The ring in the clouds flickered, destabilized like the storm noise disrupted it. My brother screamed, "What are you doing?" "Noise," I shouted over wind, voice raw. "It hates noise." Outside, the ring wavered. The mist swirl faltered as wind tore at it. I tried to hold shape, but the storm ripped it apart. For a second, I felt the pull on my chest loosen. Then the whisper hit like a knife, furious now. "You can't." The ocean outside surged. A wave crashed higher than any wave should have in that spot, slamming into the rocks like a fist. My brother grabbed me and dragged me away from the broken window, away from flying rain. We huddled in the hallway, both shaking, listening to the storm batter the house like it wanted in. The ring in the clouds dissolved into chaotic gray. The silence didn't return. The world stayed loud. Slowly, the metallic taste faded. Slowly, the pressure behind my eyes eased. The drip from the ceiling stopped. The water glass on the table settled, swirl dying. My brother stared at me, face wet with tears and rain. "Is it gone?" I wanted to lie. I wanted to say yes so badly my chest hurt, but I could still feel it. Not as a pull now, as a presence. Like a sonar ping waiting to bounce again. I swallowed hard and said the only honest thing. "I don't know." We spent the rest of the night with every light on, storm roaring outside. Both of us too exhausted to do anything but exist. In the morning, the storm passed. The ocean returned to its normal chop. The sky cleared. The air smelled clean. My brother's house looked like it had survived a normal storm. Broken window, wet floor, scattered glass. If you didn't know, you'd think it was just weather damage. My brother sat at his kitchen table staring at his hands like they weren't his anymore. I stood at the sink. He watched me warily. "Don't. I'm not," I said, but my voice was flat. I turned the faucet on. Water ran, clear and normal, splashing into the basin. The sound was normal. I stared into it, waiting for the surface to still, waiting for the swirl to form. Nothing. For a heartbeat, I felt relief. Then very faintly beneath the running water sound, I felt it in my bones. Ping. Just once. Like a distant marker buoy. Like a heartbeat. Like a promise. I shut the faucet off. My brother whispered, "Did you hear?" "Yeah," I said. He swallowed hard. "So what now?" I looked out the window at the ocean. Sunlight glittered on the surface. It looked harmless. It looked beautiful. And I knew better. "Now," I said, voice low, "we live with it." My brother stared at me. "That's not a plan." I laughed once bitter. "You got a better one?" He didn't answer. That was 2 years ago. I'm telling you this now because pretending didn't work. Running didn't work. Breaking windows didn't work. And I'm so fucking tired of acting like I'm the only one who knows what the water is capable of. Sometimes it leaves me alone for weeks. I almost forget. I almost convince myself it was trauma and fog and a sinking boat and a mind trying to survive. Then I'll be brushing my teeth and the foam in the sink will swirl into a perfect ring. Or I'll be walking past a puddle after rain and the reflection will be wrong. Too pale, too smooth. Or I'll be lying in bed at night and I'll feel cold pressure behind my eyes like I'm descending too fast and I'll hear that clean little ping in my bones, slow and steady, marking me. Ping, ping, ping. And sometimes, this is the part one hate admitting most, sometimes I wake up and for one sweet, terrifying second, I want to go back out there. I want to see the city again. I want to know what lives under it. I want to understand why it chose me, why it labeled me, why it whispered mine like it was a fact. Then I remember Keen's smile right before he went limp. I remember Rivas's, eyes going blank. I remember my brother whispering that it was singing. I remember the ring in the clouds blinking over my brother's house like the sky had an eyelid. And I forced myself to sit up, breathe, make noise, anchor myself in the human world. Because if I don't, I think the water will take the last step for me. I think one night I'll stand at a sink or a bathtub or the edge of the harbor and the surface will go perfectly still, and I'll see that pale oval reflection looking up, and I won't fight the pull. I'll just step forward like it's the most natural thing in the world. The last time it happened was a week ago. I was standing on a public pier in broad daylight, pretending I was normal, pretending sunlight makes the ocean safe. Tourists were laughing. Kids were dropping fries for gulls. A fisherman was swearing at his line. The water was choppy, glittering. Then, in the middle of the choppy glitter, a perfect circle formed. Just for a second, a smooth ring of stillness on the surface like an iris opening. Nobody noticed. I did. And deep inside my skull, quiet as a thought that isn't yours, I heard it again. Found you.